Okay, welcome back everybody. Thank you for bearing with us during that little bit of housekeeping. It's now with great delight I pass you over to our four panellists for this evening. And first of all, David Toft.
Hi. Okay. One of the things I think that really struck me listening to that was that some of the resonances for nowadays are that in many ways nowadays the political actions of radical groups seem to be suffering from something that's always suffered on the left in some ways, of fragmentation, of groups splitting apart. And one of the things that struck me there, we mentioned how young they all were, but they weren't young in the way that young people of 19 are now. They'd all left school at 14. That had only just been moved from 12. My gran left school at 12. That was the official school leaving age. In between times, they'd been working. If they were lucky to get a job, they were embedded in unions. They were embedded in a mass movement. They were not single issue people. That's one of the things that's interesting. I think it took on its mythic status because they got arrested and it got publicity and it went absolutely viral across the nation. But where they were secure, we said, and Julian said it as well, it's often levelled as a criticism of the trespass that they suddenly appeared, rocked the boat and disappeared. They didn't disappear. For them, it wasn't just an issue about access. That was just one part of their challenge on capitalism. It was the same, if you like, one part, and another part was their actions in their factories and on the streets. I mean, the whole idea was they'd said to themselves when they were at the camp at Roweth, where the idea of it started, look, if we were being treated like this back in Manchester, what would we do? Well, we'd have a demonstration, we'd call people together, we'd do that, and let's do that in the countryside. So in a way, they were absolutely not single issue, and that was a huge strength for them. They could call on massive support, actually. 400 or 500 that managed to get that day far exceeded their imaginations and anticipations. But being part of that, they didn't disappear. They went off to Spain, they went into lifetimes struggle in the factories as union representatives and so on. The danger, I think, is that, as we saw with the single issue thing of the ramblers there, they were ramblers talking to other ramblers, talking to landowners, talking to ramblers. And it was just dragging on and on and on. There was no wider discourse, whereas these youngsters had a huge sort of audience, if you like, for their discourse. It was workers in the factories. It was students at the university. One of them was at university. And so they had that wider spread of a whole challenge of the capitalist system. Nowadays, there has been fragmentation on the left and so on, but there is a danger that what you're left with is groups of, say, climate campaigners or whatever the campaign is, I'm not just picking on that, but who are talking to other people as the ramblers were talking to ramblers. And I think there's a danger that with social media, people feel that they're talking to a much wider audience, but it is a virtual audience. It's a virtual reality. It might be lots and lots of people, but they're just like you and your mates in, you know, in the pub or whatever. The way you actually challenge, and everybody's going to come up against capitalism, whatever we say, for climate, for any of the issues that are around. The whole point finally is that you have to be out on the streets, you have to be talking to real people, you have to be doorstepping, you have to be doing the really hard work, day in, day out. I'm sure groups are doing that, I'm not meaning to suggest they're not. But there is a danger that the social media is seen as a great thing. It amplifies a lot of what's being said. But the danger is, it is still a virtual reality, not a real one. When you get on those doorsteps When you get out in those streets and on the estates, there's a huge amount of very hard work to do. And if you don't do it, there's one example that struck me, and that was an Extinction Rebellion incident where they stopped a train in Canning Town. Now, I used to live in Canning Town in the East End at one point. Now, I think some of the people involved said we got it wrong, and people can get it wrong. But it's why it goes wrong and how it happens that I think we all need to think of it in the modern political scheme. Because what they did, of course, that day, if you remember, was stop an electric train, one of the cleanest forms of transport that we have in the country. It's also underground, and it was taking people who'd chosen to do that rather than drive, and nobody had spoken to those people. Nobody had explained it. Nobody knew what was happening. Of course, the people who took part in the action understood it, and no doubt great support across social media. But nobody on the train understood why it was they were being stopped from getting to work, earning their living, and it ended very badly in lots and lots of ways. To me, people make mistakes. I'm not trying to, the XR and people are doing a great thing. They're raising consciousness and so on. But if you're not having those conversations outside of your own groups, if you're not actually doing the legwork, if you like, day in, day out, if you're not explaining so that those people on the train understood what was happening, you're not going to make progress either within the issue that you're fighting on or in challenging capitalism itself across a wide thing, across education policy, housing policy, taxation policy. They're all linked. And in the end, whatever we're aiming for, you need to be having a consciousness of that. And, the old educate, agitate, organise sort of thing. That needs to be done. There's no shortcuts against reality, if you like, through a virtual reality. That's what I'd sort of take as an entree into where we are now. They were embedded, very firmly embedded in a wide political culture. So that's, yeah. Sorry, it wasn't prepared.